Hey guys, happy Friday. I'm taking a little bit of a break from making stamps. Not a big one, don't worry. I'll get your guys' orders out, always do. What I'm going to show you guys today is how to set faceted stones and a step bezel. Okay, I've got a 3mm, it's nothing fancy. It's a Brilliant Cut cubic zirconia, the CZs. And this right here is a 10mm lab created emerald. And I love lab created because they're just gorgeous. There's never any inclusions. Colors are usually fairly consistent if you buy from the same people. Now, if I'm going to be doing something that's much, something in like gold or, just a really high-end piece or something that I don't need quite so many stones of. I'm making 9 of these right now. Then I would definitely go with a much swankier, fancier cut. I've seen some of Linda Searcy's. I'm dying for them. Anyhow, so what we're going to do is I've got 2 different kinds of gallery wire. Okay, this right here I'm going to be using for the 3mm. This right here I'll be using for the 10. So starting with the 10, you want to go ahead and use a mandrel. This is a 10mm mandrel. It's got a 10mm stone that's going to fit in the inside of it. And then what you do is you just kind of wrap it around, measure it, you cut it, and you solder it closed just like you would any bezel. Okay, file the ends, make sure they're nice and flush. And then what I'll do after it's been soldered closed is I'll put it back on the mandrel. This also stretches it out a little bit, so you won't see how loose that is now. But so you don't want to do it too hard, but I'll just roll it and tap it a little bit, especially right around the outside edges of the seam. Because when I make my seams for my bezels, I usually take a pair of flat nose pliers and I crimp it flat. That way when I'm soldering it, it's sitting first of all with the thicker part towards me, and second with the seam on the bottom. And that flatness from when I crimp it, it makes it easier to make sure that you get a good solder on it, but it also helps it stay when you're soldering. So anyhow, put it on the mandrel, couple light taps as you roll it around. Make sure it's a nice circle. Okay? Next thing I want to do, this is a 26 gauge 1/4 inch bezel wire. This stuff is actually a little bit too short for what I need it for this particular application, but I'm going to use it to show you because otherwise you would just cut your own piece of sheet out. It doesn't really take very much. So this one, I use a pair of forming pliers, just kind of formed it into a little circle. You can do the same thing, you put it on a mandrel. You may have to adjust it a little bit and trim it up, but what you want it to do is to fit nice and snug on the inside here, okay? This is the part where a lot of people decide that they're going to go ahead and solder it inside and won't do all this fancy stuff. I don't do that. I've never actually needed to. I've never had an issue doing it this way, so for me, this works. Anyhow, what you'll find, and again, what I'll end up doing is taking this to the sandpaper and sanding it down a little bit, at least a millimeter. And what that'll do is, as I set this down on something flat, it'll actually raise the inner bezel because I'm not soldering the inside of it. So what this is going to do is allow that stone to sit on the inside nice and flush. Okay, now for setting it, what you want to do is very gently. You don't want to push your prongs all the way over. Same thing as when you're setting anything else. Okay, I don't have a bezel pusher with me. I have plenty of stamps. All right. So what you're going to want to do is very gently, just a little bit at a time, go around. And again, don't put the inner part of the bezel in your step for your bezel in until after you've soldered this on, because otherwise it'll melt. So this is going to go on my piece. Then I'll put the little center step bezel in, and then when everything is done, as always, set your stone. So I'll push this prong in a little bit, and I'll go to the other side, and you just want to work on opposites, your north, south, east, west, and anything in between after that. And then do it very gently, a little bit at a time. What that's going to do is it's going to keep your stone from slipping because it can still kind of tilt around on itself a little bit, and you want it to sit as evenly as possible. So that's your 10mm. And again, I'm going to take the step out and shorten this up about maybe about a 1/2 millimeter or so, and that'll raise the stone up after I put the step in. Now, for the fun part. Everyone's so afraid of setting these tiny little stones. Let's fix that. This is a real fine bezel wire. gallery wire. If you guys need the stock numbers for these, I get these ones from Rio. Just ask and I'll put it in the comments. So what I'll do is I'll use my mandrel, kind of wrap it around. I've already done like 9 of these. Wrap it around, or I found that this second smallest piece in my little bead landing, second smallest extension of my bead landing is actually about perfect. Wrap it around, cut it, and what I'll do after I cut the first one, since I'm doing 9 of these, is I'll count how many spikes that there are, and then I'll just cut it, and then I'll form them after that. Anyhow, you want to solder it closed. Again, same deal. Once you get it soldered closed, you're going to need it to go back on the mandrel, and then you'll have to do the roll and hammer thing to make sure you get it all perfectly flat. Again, this is definitely going to stretch it, but that's okay. Next thing you want to do is I've got some heavy walled tube wire. I've got some heavy walled tubing. And this little bad boy, it just barely fits on the inside of there, which is perfect for what I need. Now, this is one of those things where you have to keep in mind the capabilities of your tools, okay? And unfortunately, my tube cutter, even clean, because I use it a lot, but my tube cutter, it's not going to go small enough to where I can set my step on the inside of here. So what I'm going to end up doing for this one is I'm just going to make my tool work for me. And that's kind of what you want to do with all of your tools, is I'll set it to the length that I think that I want it with the tube set in. And that looks about right. And then what I'll do is this is so much fun. When you're trying to make tools work the way that they're not particularly intended to, you may have some trouble, but I've done this enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, instead of sawing on the inside of this little split right here where you're supposed to, I'm going to saw right up against the inside of here. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a tube that's the perfect height for what I need it to do. But because I haven't done that yet, and I found out the hard way, as we all always find out when we're smithing, I've already cut one tiny little piece, but I want to show you the idea behind how this is supposed to work. Okay, so fortunately this little tube is going to fit right on the inside. Okay, and again, this one is too high, but I know that when I cut a thinner piece or I rub it on some sandpaper and make it a little bit smaller, that it's going to sit right about here. And then my little stone is going to fit perfectly on the inside. And again, same thing, always go opposites. Okay, kind of like in a star pattern. Think of it as taking your wheels off. Okay, when you undo your lug nuts, if you guys don't know this, hey, you're going to learn two new things today, maybe 3. When you're undoing the lug nuts on your car, you want to go in a star pattern. Okay, if it's an 8-wheel, you go top, bottom, left, right, yada 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 yada, but you always go opposites. Okay, you always do it a little bit at a time. But that's how you want to set your stones when you're setting your stones, faceted stones in gallery wire. Okay, so these are 2 different ways that you can do it. And again, just to kind of do a quick little recap. Nope, she's in there upside down. But to do a quick little recap, solder your gallery wire onto your piece before you put your step in. Always set your stones after everything is done. Okay, and push the prongs down just like you would put on and take off a tire. Okay, in a star pattern or opposite pattern, north, south, east, west kind of deal, depending on how many prongs you have. And always do just a little bit at a time. Okay, don't force it or your stone's going to sit cattywampus. All right, you guys, I hope y'all learned something. Another thing that we're going to end up doing, just in case you guys haven't discovered, it looks like a lot of people have already. That's what the dinging in the background is. We have a giveaway going on for a free bee stamp. Now, this guy, here it is. This is the original. Okay, this is the master stamp. Master stamps I keep to let me know if there's something different that I should be doing for the next one to perfect it, as I'm carving them. And also to look back on and go, oh yeah, okay. I see how I curved this line in, because most of the details I'll just kind of graze over really lightly, but most of the rest of the details, the finer details, are definitely done by eye. and I'll refer back to these as I recarve them and they're ordered. So for example, for this one right here, I don't really like the tip of this wing. I think it's too sharp. You know, there's a couple things about it that, you know, I make sure that I change and I double check as I'm carving orders, so you guys get a much better stamp than the master ones that I have. Anyhow, so we're going to be giving one of these away. All you got to do is like, not this post, but like the post that I have up for the giveaway. You can share it, share the post, share the page, I don't care. Just, you know, let everybody know, hey, you know, TMS is doing a giveaway. If you already have a B stamp, oh, and then tag a friend. Make sure you tag a friend in it, because, you know, we want to give everybody a chance to be able to win one of these. This is a $45 value. Shipping is going to be free for domestic US. Everybody else, you know, just you pay the $14 shipping, and then we'll get you a $45 stamp for free. Anyhow, so yeah, we've got the giveaway going on. If you already have a B stamp, don't worry about it. We'll give you one for free that's of equal or lesser value. Or if you want to use a $45 credit towards something else, not a problem. But either way, we're going to have that going on. The giveaway is going to be next Friday on June 9th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, U.S. Until then, I hope you guys have a beautiful weekend. Again, I hope you learned a couple things, and we'll try and do some more of these in the future. Take care.